Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. Welcome to Mathematics with Shahab Yaqub. So now another P1 paper, Pure Maths 1 paper. This is of May, June 2025. And now, yes, there is also a fourth variant. So let's get started. So now let's look at question number 1. It says the equation of a curve is such that the gradient function, the function that gives you the gradient, naturally it's called the gradient function, the dy by dx, that is given. It is given that the curve passes through the point. So let me just get my highlighter ready. The curve passes through the point 2, 4. Find the equation of the curve, and it's for 4 mark, a basic question. Now, what is this question all about? This question is all about differentiation and integration. Technically, it's about integration. Dy by dx is given. That is why I'm saying this is differentiation. But we find the equation of the curve by integrating the gradient function. So now that's the basic idea. Let's unbox it. So now that is the first step that you have to write. Y equals to such and such. And then you actually start integrating it. So now this is integrated using the chain rule. Why? Because this is a linear expression. The power is all good. Increase the power by 1, divide by the new power. Don't forget to divide by coefficient of x. This is basic integration. Don't forget the constant of integration. And then always make a habit of simplification. Remember the words simplification is the name of the game. So now once you do this, then you plug in the values of x and y. So you plug in x, you plug in y. What do you find? You find the value of k, show all the steps. There is nothing extra in it. And then rewrite the equation with the value of k over here. So the value of k is -10 and the rest of the equation is the same as before. So now 4 marks are obtained this way. Next question. Now this is about binomial. In the expansion of this bracket plus this bracket. So now there is an addition between the two brackets. The coefficient of x square is 6 times the coefficient of x. So now first of all, this is for 5 marks. So all of a sudden 5 marks is a lot. It's not difficult, it's just lengthy. You need to expand this for the coefficient of x squared, for the coefficient of x. You need to expand this thing for the coefficient of x squared, for the coefficient of x. Now, when we are talking about x squared, take the x squared, take the x squared, because this is addition. When we talk about the coefficient of x, take the x and add it up and then apply this equation. So now that is the strategy that you have to apply. So now first thing first, 3 plus ax raised to power of 5, that is how you expand it. That is 5c0. And this is the second term raised to power of 0, 5c1, second term raised to power of 1, 5c2, second term raised to power of 2. So I did not apply the particular term formula. I just wrote the first 3 terms. And the overall power should be 5, which is n in this case. Or I can say the overall power should be n, which is 5 in this case. This is 0, this is 5, this is 1, this is 4, this is 2, this is 3. Use a calculator, use common sense, simplify, and this is what you're getting. So that is this thing, this thing, this thing. Remember the green expression and the purple over here. So now the second one, that is again obtained in the same manner, nothing special. That is 4c0, 4c1, 4c2. You get the first 3 terms. Remember the coefficient of x, the coefficient of x squared. Now these two, the 2 greens will add up to the coefficient of x. The 2 purples will add up to the coefficient of x squared. And now look at what I have done. I have made 2 columns. And over here, the coefficient of x squared is this plus this. The coefficient of x is this plus this. And then we have this thing, which is the coefficient of x squared is 6 times the coefficient of x. There is the expression. The coefficient of x squared is 6 times the coefficient of x. And now it's a simplification. Maybe you're getting a quadratic or something like that. You're getting 2 possible values. Does it say there are these possible values? Yes, it says so. So now it says find the possible values of the constant a. Therefore, both values are accepted. Nothing is to be rejected. Now we are on question number 3. It says use the completing the square method to find the exact solutions of this equation. So now you don't have to use the quadratic formula. You cannot factorize naturally. So you have to find the completing, you have to use the completing square method. Now, what is the first prerequisite for completing the square? That is, make sure the coefficient of x square is 1. So you take this constant common throughout. That's the way I do it. There is another school of thought. They take common from the first two and leave the third term aside. That's their choice. But the way that I do it is that I believe in justice. I take it common throughout. So now, then what do? Then what we do is that we first add, then subtract square of half the coefficient of x. That's the poem that you should remember. First add, then subtract square of half the coefficient of x. Once this is done, then you simplify. You rewrite the first three terms as a perfect square. That becomes this. And this is simplification. Don't forget, when you open up the bracket, everything will be multiplied with the constant on the outside, which is 4. And this is what you are getting. So this is the completing square method. Now equate it to the right hand side. So basically, I was working on the left hand side. That is the left hand side. That is up till here is the left hand side. And what's on the right hand side? That is this green one. That is 0. That is this green one. That is 0. And once I equate to it, what is happening? I'm getting this bracket whole square is equals to half. Take the square root. Don't forget the plus minus sign. You can use the rationalized. You can use this is rationalized, by the way. This is unrationalized. I'm using rationalized. Why am I using it? Because then these two denominators are the same. So simplification would be easier. So these are the possible values of x. That is the first thing. Exact solution. Solution is plural. Solutions is plural. Hence solve this equation. Now that's a beauty. That is a nice question. They have used quadratics. They have merged it with the concept of trigonometry. So hence solve this equation. And this is the simplicity that I use. That is tangent theta can be written as a capital T. So instead of tan, I have written T. Instead of tan, I have written a T. Now make this the subject, and what are you getting? You are getting the same equation that's right over here. This was in terms of x. This one is in terms of t. Same as part 1. You have to realize it. You have to realize hence. And then the value of tangent theta equals to 1 plus minus root 2 over 2. Once with a negative sign, once with a positive sign. Let me just highlight this thing. Just hold for a second. So that's with a negative sign. That's with a positive sign. You are getting this value. You are getting this value. When tangent is positive, that's the first and third quadrant. When tangent is negative, that's the second and fourth quadrant. But we are limited. We are not talking about one single revolution. We are talking about between 0 and 180. So now over here, when we are talking about between 0 and 180, so we are just focusing on the second quadrant. And similarly, we are just focusing on the first quadrant. So basically, that is what we are focusing on. So fourth quadrant is not relevant. Third quadrant is not relevant in this particular question. Again, the rule is simple. Always calculate with a positive ratio. That is the basic angle. That's the rule. Another basic angle, you can use the same symbol. You can use different symbol. In the first quadrant, theta is alpha. In the second quadrant, it's 180 minus alpha. Take care of the accuracy. So was any accuracy mentioned? No, it's not mentioned over here. It's mentioned at the beginning page. That is the rubric that we follow. That is this, that when we are talking about angles in degrees, the final answer should be given correct to 1 dp. So just take care of these small little things and you'll all set for your A star. So now over here, there is no A star in AS level, but you do the A star kind of working in AS level and then you get an overall A star in A2. So now coming back to this. The diagram shows part of the curve. The shaded region is bounded by the curve. The line x is equals to 2 and the x-axis. That's the line x is equals to 2. That is the x-axis. Curve meets x-axis, y coordinate is 0. Therefore, x is plus minus 1. So over here, naturally, this is plus 1. Find the volume formed. Find the volume of revolution volume form when the shaded region is rotated 360 degrees about the x-axis, giving your answer correct to 2 decimal places. So sometimes the examiner wants the answer in exact form, other times it's talking about decimal places. So over here, we won't follow the general rule of 3SF, we will follow the general rule, the rule that's given over here. That's 2 dp, therefore work in 3 dp. So now first thing first, what do? You write the equation v is equals to pi, the equation of the curve, square. First square, then integrate, then plug in the limits. Don't forget to multiply by pi. So now what I've done is that I have squared it on the sidelines. So I love working on the sidelines because now that makes thing easier. No, not this thing. So that makes things easier for me. So that is working on the sidelines. So this sideline working is done. That is the squaring part. Simplify. Now plug it in over here. So now when we plug it in over here, hold for a second. So let me just focus. That is the thing that is done over here. So now we will integrate. The squaring is done. Integrate, that is integration of each term. That's pretty basic. And then after simplification, you plug in the upper limit, you plug in the lower limit. So now let me grab my marker. This is the upper limit 2. It's plugged in over here, over here, over here. Then the lower limit is 1. It's plugged in over here, over here, over here. So now just do a bit of simplification and then it's your choice. It's your choice that you can use the decimals from here or you can use it later. What I was dealing with, that I'm just picking up like terms like this. And the integers, when the integers, that's your choice. So now to a certain extent, I was playing around in the exact form and then I'm back to the basics of the calculator. This is an exact decimal. This is an integer. Over here, I'm working in decimal places, 4 dp. Final answer, you have to plug in pi. Pi is 3.142. That's 4 SF or 3 dp. That's perfectly fine. And this is the very, very final answer that we are getting, which is 14.1 units cube because this is volume. So far, so good. Question number 5, circular measure. Now over here, what is given? The diagram shows a sector ABD of a circle with center A. That is center A, that is ABD, that is over here. If this is 10 centimeter, this whole thing is also 10 centimeter. Or actually, this is given as 10, so therefore this is also 10. The perpendicular bisector of AB passes through D. The perpendicular bisector of AB passes through D. Find the perimeter of the shaded region. Give your answer correct to 1 dp. So now, first of all, this is 5, this is 10. This angle is coming out to be 60 degrees, but we are working in radians. So now the rule is when we are talking about circular measure. So when we are talking about circular measure, the rule is radians. Calculate it in radian mode, angle in radians. So now over here, first thing first, what is that? That is, I have found DC. So now over here, I have 10, I have 5, I found DC in the exact form. I'll use the calculator later. As far as the arc length is concerned, that is this angle into radius, that is again in the exact form. Now I work in the exact form, whether this is surds, whether it is in terms of pi, and then I'll use the calculator later. So now when we are talking about the perimeter, that is this length plus 5 plus the arc length. So that is this length, root 75, that was the height, plus the arc length, that is this. CB is 5. Now use a calculator, and then work in 2 decimal places. So now write it out. Work in 2 decimal places so that the final answer is given to 1 dp. That's it. So now this thing is done, a lot of blank space. Sometimes I observe that the space is a bit lesser. So work always from the very left, very left, and then work it out. Sometimes the space is more. Find the area of the shaded region. What's the area of the shaded region? The area of the shaded region is the area of the sector minus area of the triangle. So that is how you get it. So now over here, let me remove this thing. Area of triangle, that is half into base into height, that is this much. Area of sector, half r squared theta, that is this much. Area of shaded region is the difference between the two. Again, the final answer is 1 dp. Question number 6. Now, what is this about? This is about, I think, APGP. On Anania's first birthday, her father gives us $10. That's a very mathematical family. Every subsequent year, her father gives her $5 more than he gave her on the previous year. So this is AP. On Anania's first birthday, her mother also gives us 10. Every subsequent year, her mother gives us 20% more. So that's a GP. Show that on Anania's 11th birthday, she receives more from her mother than from her father. So now that is the data. Always make sure to write the data. The common difference is 5. The common ratio is 1 plus R in decimal. 20% is 0.2. 1 plus 0.2. 1 plus 0.2 is 1.2. Number of terms 11. Our first term is 10. Use the formula, that is the particular term formula, because they are asking about that particular term. So now over here, that's the red marker. Tn is A plus n minus 1 into D. And similarly, GP is ARN minus 1. So just use the formula, and what are we getting? We are getting this value. We are getting this value. So on her 11th birthday, the blue amount, which is the amount given by the mom, is greater than the amount given by her dad. So that is the first thing. The next one, find the total amount of money Anania receives up to and including her 18th birthday. That is the sum formula. So again, the data is here. And now we use the sum formula. What is the sum formula? Sn is equals to n divided by 2, 2a plus n minus 1 into d. What is the sum formula for GP? That is A R power n minus 1 over R minus 1. Some people, they write this thing as A 1 minus R power n over 1 minus R. That is perfectly good. Doesn't make a difference. So again, it's just a plug and chug kind of working. This is an exact value. This is rounded off to 4 significant figures. And then the total is this much. And then I round it off to 3SF. So just have a good look at the working. I think it's a very normal paper, but of course P1 is not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted. I mean, you just need a lot of basic maths in it. Now it says in the parallelogram ABCD, the coordinates of A are such and such, the coordinates of B are such and such, coordinates of D such and such. It is gradient, given that the gradient of AB is this much, find the value of P. That is pretty basic. So I just drew a diagram. That is, the gradient is negative. That is why I drew the line like this. It just has to be realistic. I mean, first of all, diagram is not necessary, but I personally prefer drawing diagrams. I just love diagrams. So now the gradient is negative. Use the gradient formula, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, p comes out to be 5. So that's a pretty basic question for 2 marks. Find the coordinates of C. Now, since it's a parallelogram, ABCD, that means the midpoint of A and C should be the same thing as the midpoint of B and D. That should be the midpoint of B and D. So make a habit of writing things properly. I wrote A, I wrote C, I wrote B, I wrote D. The average of X should equal the average of this. So X plus X, the 2 and 2 cancels out, X comes out to be 4. The average of Y coordinates should equal the average of Y coordinates. The midpoint of diagonals is the same. You get Y is equals to 3. So the final answer is 4, 3. That's the coordinates of C. That's a pretty basic thing. So 2 marks, 2 marks. Find the area of the triangle formed by the perpendicular bisector of AB and the x-axis and the y-axis. Now we have A, we have B. I found the midpoint of A and B. That is 9 over 2, 6. I found the gradient of AB. Actually, I did not find it. It was already given. So therefore, the gradient of the perpendicular is 3 over 2. So now what do we have? We have this thing, which is the midpoint. We have this thing, which is the gradient of perpendicular bisector. So let's use these two. And if I use these two, what do I have? So let me grab my marker from here. That's over here. So therefore, y minus y1 is equals to mx minus x1. This is mx minus x1. That's all taken care of. When line meets x-axis, y coordinate is 0. So y coordinate is coming out to be half. When line meets y-axis, x coordinate is 0. X comes out to be, x is 0. Therefore, y comes out to be this thing. When line meets x-axis, y is 0. So therefore, y is 0. If I want to write this coordinate, that would be half, 0. That is this point over here. And when x is equals to 0, y is this thing. So this coordinate is 0 and negative 3/4. That is over here. So now this triangle is formed. That is the base. That is the height. Ignore the negative sign. Half into 3/4. This comes out to be 3/16 square units. 5 marks. I think it's worth maximum 3 marks. But anyway. So now question number 8. It says the equation of a curve is such and such. The curve has a stationary point. Now when a curve has a stationary point, derivative equals to 0 when x is equals to 1. And the other equation is when x is 1, y is 9. So it's a simultaneous kind of normal question. So now first of all, we have x is 1, y is 9. That's equation 1. Find dy by dx, differentiate. X cube becomes 3x square. Ax square becomes 2ax. Derivative of bx is b. Derivative of 5 is 0. So that's the other equation solved simultaneously. A is negative 6, b is 9. I did not waste time on solving it simultaneously because it is very, very obvious. Now, second one, that is what? Find the coordinates of the other stationary point. So you already have dy by dx. You plug in the value of a and b. So now let me just show you where I plugged it in. A is negative 6, that is over here. So 2 into A, 2 into negative 6 is this much. And over here, B is 9, B is 9 over here. So you have dy by dx, you make it equal to 0. You simplify because all these numbers, they are divisible by 3. You do middle term factorization. So something very, very important. That is MTF, middle term factorization. And then you're getting x is 1 and x is 3. So now x is 1 was already given. I think there it is. X is equals to 1 is already given. So which other point are we talking about? We are talking about this particular point. Now plug this value of x. X is equals to 3 goes in equation of curve. And we find the value of y. And once we find the value of y, that's right over here. And then also we need this thing. That is the equation of a curve is given. And what are they asking for? Coordinates of the other stationary point. Yes, what I did over here, let me just deal with this color. That is the value of B. And over here, the orange, that's the value of A. So first you find the equation of a curve and then you plug in this value, which is x is equals to 3. All good. And that's the value of y and that's the other point. Part C. That is, a point C is moving along the curve in such a way that the y coordinate of P is increasing at a constant rate of 6 units per second. So therefore, dy by dt is this much. So let me just highlight it. Dy by dt is 6. That's right over here. Y coordinate is increasing at a constant rate. Find the rate at which the x coordinate of P is increasing. We are looking for this when x is equals to 5. So we are interested in dx by dt. And we already have x is equals to 5. Therefore, dy by dx is 24. So that is dy by dx. That is 24 given over here. So we get a very beautiful, simple answer, which is 1/4. Leave the answer in fractions because fractions are beautiful. Now, question number 9. It says f and g are defined as follows. Fx is cosine x. Gx is this expression. Describe fully the transformations that have been combined to transform the graph of fx to gx. So what we are doing is this thing. We have cos x. Cos x is becoming cos x minus pi. X minus pi. That's the first transformation. Then this thing is multiplied with 3. That is the second transformation. Then this 2 is added. That is the third transformation. So I break up the horizontal shift or translation separately, the vertical shift or translation separately, and naturally the stretch parallel to y-axis is separate. So now let's look at what I have written. The first one, that is this thing, cos x minus pi. That means it's a horizontal translation. The translation vector is pi 0. Remember the opposite effect along the x-axis. The second one, it's a vertical stretch parallel to y-axis, scale factor 3. So that is over here. Then third one, vertical translation. It's going 2 units up. Whatever is written, that's written. Translation vector is 0, 2. Now it says on the given axes, sketch the graph of fx and gx. Now gx is not complete. I still have to move it up. So now that is the original graph. That is cosine x between 0 and pi. Cosine x is 0 and pi. That is drawn in red color. And then this one, I think that's the purple one. So hold for a second, it's running from here and there. So now the purple one is the graph of this thing. Now over here, this much that I have drawn, that is the purple one. Now I need to move it 2 units up, and it's from pi till 2 pi. That is how you are drawing it. So now first thing first, this thing, the period is still the same, but it has moved over here. So that is how it has moved. So this has moved pi units to the right, and now I have to move it 2 units up. So now if I move it 2 units up, let me just grab it, and between 0 and 3, it will move up to 2 and 5. So now let me go up like this, and it's from 2 till 5. So now this is 2, this is 5, that is how this is drawn. And of course, it's not very exact. This is, of course, a sketch. It has to be realistic, and that is how this thing is drawn. So this one is y is equals to gx, the purple one, the red one, that is y is equals to fx. Make sure to annotate it. So now let's look at part C. What is part C all about? In part C, it says find g inverse of f of pi by 3. So now over here, f of pi by 3, that's pretty basic. Just plug in the value, you get half. G inverse of f of pi by 3, what do you need? We have gx, find the inverse. So that is the traditional way. That is, let y is equals to gx, g inverse y is equals to x. So replace gx with y, replace gx with y, and make x the subject. Y is equals to 3 cosine such plus 2, the bracket plus 2. Take 2 on the other side, divide by 3. Cos of something is this. Cos inverse of this thing should be x minus y. Make x the subject. X is this much, but what is x equals to? That is g inverse y. X is g inverse y, therefore g inverse x is such and such. So that is pretty basic. Now we are evaluating g inverse of f of pi by 3 is technically g inverse of half. So plug in half over here. In place of x, that's right over here. So that is half over here that you have plugged in. And now here comes the real thing. That is, when we are getting this thing, that's cos inverse of negative half. So now we are talking about a composite function. We should take the common domain. One domain is between 0 and pi. The other domain is between pi and 2 pi. So now let's take this domain, which is over here between 0 and pi, because it's dependent upon f. So g inverse is dependent upon this. So let's focus on this. So now we are talking about the second quadrant. Therefore, cos inverse of negative half is 2 pi by 3. And this is coming out to be 5 pi by 3. Now another 1 mark question, which is very important. That is, explain why the composite fg cannot be formed. Now what is the rule? The rule is, if a composite function is to be formed, whatever comes out of g, that is the range, should be a subset of domain of f. So let me write it over here. Let me use a blue marker. Range of g, and this is domain of f. So range of g should be part and parcel subset of domain of f. Now let me go up. What is the domain of f? That is between 0 and pi. So domain of f, let me just write down the numbers. That is between 0 and pi, which is 3.142. Let me focus on range of g. So range of g, I'm going all the way up till here. That is between 5 and 2. So now this is between, no, it's not 2, my bad. It's going all the way up till negative 1 over here. So now this is negative 1 till 5. Do you think that this thing over here, I think I went to the wrong thing, that's right over here. So now over here, is this a subset of this? Of course not. So if I focus on this thing, that is this line. So let me just draw it dark. So that is this. And if I focus on this line, that is over here. So now let me label it more clearly. Let's say this is negative 1, this is 5, let's say this is 0, and this is 3.142. So now between 1 and 5 is not a subset of this thing, therefore this thing cannot be formed. Since this condition is not fulfilled, therefore the composite function cannot be formed. Yes, it's only for 1 mark, but this logic is the only logic that you need. Let's move to question number 10. So now question number 10, it says find the equation of a tangent to the circle at this point, giving your answer in this form. The equation of a circle, this is the general form. You have to use the completing square method to find the center of the circle and then coordinate geometry. So now first of all, let's look at this. What's the first thing that's done? I have shifted -12 to the other side. I have written x square with x, y square with y. The coefficient of x square and y square will always be the same. For completing square, it's necessary that it should be 1, which is the case. And then what do we do? So now let me just remove this. Now first of all, what we do is that first we add, then we subtract square of half the coefficient of x. Similarly, first add, then subtract square of half the coefficient of y. Now, when we talk about the first 3 terms, that becomes this. And those 3 terms, the x terms, that becomes this. Now, what do we do with this thing? That is this -4 from here. Or again, this -4 square from here. We transfer it to the next side, right hand side, and then simplify. That comes out to be this. And then we compare coefficient with x minus h whole square. Y minus k whole square is r square. So radius is square root of 32, but not needed. We just need the center of the circle. So now the center of the circle, let me write this thing as C. And this other point, let me write this thing as Q. So this is C, -2, 4. This is Q. I find the gradient, that is +1. But gradient of tangent is the negative reciprocal because radius is perpendicular to tangent at the point of contact. And that is how I find the equation of the tangent. So that is the first part. For 4 marks, pretty basic. Now it says, given that the line does not intersect the circle, that's the equation of the circle. This is the equation of a line. It does not intersect. That means it's full-fledged quadratic thing. B square minus 4ac should be less than 0. So now I think I've done this question in 2 different ways. First thing, y is equals to k minus x over 3. Y equals to k minus x over 3. And let me plug it in over here. So where am I plugging it in? I'm plugging it in y. I'm plugging it in y. So now look over here. There is this y square. That's this thing. That is 8 into y. That's 8 into this thing. Now, yes, it's for 5 marks. That means the algebra is pretty strong. So first square, you're getting this. Don't forget 3 squared. That's over here. I'm keeping it intact. I'm multiplying throughout by 9. So now this will be multiplied with 9. This will be multiplied with 9. This will be, because of this 3, multiplied by 3. This 12 will be multiplied by 9. Simplify. You have the x square and the x square term. You have all the x's. You have everything else which is a constant, and you are getting this. Once you get the hang of this, then what do? This is the coefficient of x square, and this is the coefficient of x, and this is the constant term that's right over here. Now again you apply algebra. So algebra is in the air, and once you apply algebra, you apply the concept which is b square minus 4ac is less than 0. And then you simplify, and you just have to reach this particular point. That is all that is required. So algebra everywhere. Now let me call this thing as method number 1, in the sense that I have work in terms of x. That is method number 1. What if someone is working in terms of y? So now over here, this is method number 2. There is nothing wrong with working in terms of y. Some people have a doubt. So now this is work in terms of y. So now it says, given that the same thing, and now what have I replaced? So now over here, this x is replaced with k minus 3y, and this x is replaced with k minus 3y. So I made x the subject. So now this is work in terms of y. That means makes x the subject. Over here, make y the subject, therefore work in terms of x. That is the difference between the two. Of course, the intermediate steps would be different. Final answer would be the same. Just have a good look. Expansion, simplification, collection of the like terms. Now look at this equation. This is 10y squared minus 20 minus 6ky, k squared 4k 12, negative 12. And over here, this is 10, 60 minus 2k and different terms over here. But it all will balance out at the very end. Again, b squared minus 4ac is less than 0. And then you apply this, again you are getting this answer. So I think the grand finale of this particular paper was very, very nice. And this was the first time that they have the fourth variant. And remember the date. That is the year 2025, in which all the papers have a fourth variant in maths. I'm not sure about other things, but that is what we have. So that is how this question is done and dusted. And stay tuned on more content on mathematics with Shahab Yaqub. Take care, everyone.